She-Ra, Princess of Power.
The land speeder has a snap-open space hatch and Star Wars action figures.
But beneath that uniform, she is the Wonder Woman doll.
You can pit He-Man against Beast-Man playing for the power of Castle Grayskull.
My little pony, my little pony.
G.I. Joe, American hero.
The battle is on for the Sword of Omen.
You're going nowhere. I got you for 3 minutes. 3 minutes of heat time.
Hi, I'm Johnny Havoc.
And I'm Newt.
We're Simple Tricks and Nonsense. And if you guys have watched our videos, you know we're about costumes and toys. You also notice right off the bat here that we are at 100% Simple Tricks and Nonsense strength, and we're at 50% Fans of Power strength. And we've got a hired gun today who's going to help us talk about custom toys. And that's going to be the subject, is custom toys, because 3 of these folks work on some great customs, and we want to learn about their hobby and their craft. So first off, we have the expert Dollar Tree shopper and Masters of the Universe custom maker. You work on other customs too, though, right, Joe?
Oh yeah, I've done Star Wars, Marvel stuff, Ninja Turtles. Yeah, I'll do anything. I specialize in Masters of the Universe, but yeah, I do anything.
And somebody you guys may not have seen, and I'm happy to have here for the first time, we have Chad. Hey. And looking by your background, you specialize in what?
That would be G.I. Joe, sir.
G.I. Joe, awesome. And then Newt, if you had a specialty, which would it be?
It would be Masters of the Universe and Princess of Power.
Okay.
I'm good at the girly stuff, like rerouting the hairs and stuff.
All right, so I'm going to ask, we're going to treat this like therapy. Can you guys hear me okay? Because I seem like I'm quieter than everybody else.
No, I hear you just fine.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. All right. So, like I said, we're going to treat this like therapy, and we're going to go all the way back to the beginning. Can you guys remember, like, your first custom? Do you still have any of your first customs, or?
I don't have it, but it would probably be like that Red Sonja doll that I made whenever I was a little kid. Which was just a Barbie that I painted up to look like Bridget Nielsen's Red Sonja, and I gave her the what is it called? The power cut that she had.
Yeah.
It's like the long hair in the back, so that would have been mine.
What about you guys? Joe?
Oh, me? Well, Jesus. I have... Well, I can't touch it now. Wait, let me go over here. My first one is encased there. That's the first one I ever sold. When I was a kid, I was, God, probably, I don't know, 8 years old, maybe at the time. And in 3rd grade, they were just doing stuff like with pottery. Everybody's making ashtrays or some crap. And I sat there and I made Pac-Man. But I turned him into Count Pacula. Even when I was 8 years old, without knowing what a custom is. This is before customs were customs. I just did this, yeah, I did this for my mom. I was like, she loved Pac-Man. I like Count Dracula. So I made Count Pacula. And throughout the years, the pupils popped out and eyebrows and teeth came out. But I still have him over there on another shelf. And then later in school, when people are, again, making ashtrays and cups, I made King Hiss and the Mechadrone. And I kept that when I was a kid. And then when I first started doing customs as a living, I did this horrible looking imp that's in this case over here. And the story with that was I sold it on eBay. Well, first, oh no, this is going to be too long of a story, but I talk quick, so I'm going to say it real quick. The one job that I used to work at, that place went out of business. I didn't know what I was going to do for a living, but I was like, I don't want to work in a factory no more. I want to do something different. Going to eBay, and I seen people selling customs, and this one guy had this imp that sold for $85. I was like, you know what? I've never made a custom like this, for a living. I was like, I'm going to see what I can do in 10, 15 minutes. I made this imp look like absolute garbage, sold for $75. But that guy then said, hey, he was like, can you make every form of imp for me? The 22 forms that you've seen in the cartoon. I was like, sure. So as I was doing it, my skills were improving. And then when I looked at the items of imp in his forms and looked at the thing I did over there, I was like, that looks like shit. I can't do that. I can't give that to him. So I sculpted a new imp that looked even better. And I was like, would you rather have this in place? He's like, oh man, go ahead. So I have the first thing I ever sold in this case, and it's a reminder of where I started and where I'm at right now.
Awesome. Awesome.
That is awesome.
Chad, what about you? Do you have any of yours? So we have
Some of my first customs were in the 90s when the Power of the Force 2 figures came out from Star Wars. I made a few customs, some Sand Troopers. I made a Ceremony Luke with the that gold and yellow jacket on, and it was mostly just paint apps and a little greebling here and there, but they weren't that great of quality. I was just a kid, messing around in my mid-20s. But now in my adult years, I made the Transformers Seekers, the Decepticon Seekers, out of some G.I. Joe Storm Eagles. Those are the first customs I've made since I really got back into toys and customizing toys.
So all these questions I'm going to ask, you guys can just take it away, and then if you have something to add to it, just keep it rolling. It doesn't matter to me. I want to hear everybody's opinion, but are there techniques or tools or materials that you've discovered now, or that exist now, that you wish you knew about then?
Yeah, I wish I had epoxy sculpt back then, because I came up with this whole method of air dry clay and like coating it in resin just to get it not to crack, because air dry clay will crack no matter what. And I had this whole process I came up with on it. Then I discovered epoxy sculpt. I'm like, oh, that's what I needed.
Yeah, for me, it was Sculpey and Super Sculpey. I was like, this is the best stuff in the whole world. This is fantastic. And then, yeah, it cracks. And then you're having issues, at least the ones I was using. I was like, wait a second, how am I going to get this to set? It's like, I can't bake it. If I bake a figure, it's going to melt. It's like,
exactly.
Let's do the boiling water and set it in boiling water for 45 seconds. But you're right. Then came other materials like, oh, thank God, because you do some great looking stuff, and then when it falls apart, it's like, oh, that's a disaster. So especially when you're getting something to a customer. So now that they have these new materials, like, okay, this is great. This won't crack unless you slam it into a wall or something most of the time. Not that I'm slamming stuff into a wall, but you see what I mean.
Yeah.
For me, I'm going to say a Dremel. Dremel is my best friend.
Yeah.
I can do anything with a Dremel.
So in sculptural terms, there's additive sculpting, and then there's subtractive sculpting. So in your case, with the Dremel, you feel like you're doing more subtractive sculpting because you're removing material.
Right. All right. So I use a Dremel in a subtractive kind of way, but then there's also some other tricks that I'll do with a Dremel where I'll Dremel little holes in things so I can put in magnets.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Yep. So I do a lot of tricks with magnets on, especially figures. I'll use them for vehicles, but with figures with like detachable arms and accessories and things like that. But I'll sculpt pieces down with Dremels. However, I feel they need to fit into the project, but it's definitely subtractive.
Nice. We have one of the Jackal Man. We added a couple small rare earth magnets just so that he can keep his rifle on his back.
Yeah, because
they give him all these great accessories, and it's like, so just he's already got a bandolier. Let's put that on his back to make it look like he's carrying it.
Right.
Let's see what else we have. When you make customs for yourself, this is for yourself typically, which comes first? Is it the inspiration, like I have this idea that I want to do, or do you see a figure or a vehicle or something like that and go, I can turn that into this? Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Which comes first, the idea or the inspiration coming from the object?
Well, you know this, but mine is I get the idea in my head, and then I look for a figure that's going to be right for that. Sometimes I do see a figure, and I'm like, hey, that would be great, so-and-so, and then I'll get it. But most of the time, it is something I want in my head, and then I have to search for a figure to match that.
Yeah, I've never made beyond. I told you that Green Granomere for myself. I don't do customs for myself because I need the money, so I kind of do them all for commission. So I was like, I would love to make a lot of these figures and keep in my collection, but it's something sadly I don't do. But otherwise, I mean, when I am thinking of ideas, it's almost the same thing with what Rebecca said. I just have a vision in my head, then I'm looking for a body, and then I make it. and there you go. But yeah, I don't do stuff for myself, unfortunately.
So I only make customs for myself. I have given 2 customs away ever. I don't make them to sell. I just make them for me, for the love of creating or building. It's actually, making customs to me is kind of like a therapeutic thing. I like the meticulous nature of it. And as far as answering your question, John, mine is either or. So sometimes I'll get an idea like, I really want a 1/18 scale, or 3 3/4, 4 inch, however you want to describe that. I go by scale. I want to make a 1/18 scale masked rhino.
Mm-hmm.
G.I. Joe 25th anniversary came out with that Specialist Matte Tracker. So Specialist Matte Tracker needed a ride. And, the most iconic vehicle in mask is the rhino. So I decided I wanted to make a 1/18 scale masked rhino. So the inspiration came first, and then I hunted for the vehicle.
Mm.
So I had to find a specific truck that fit, like, the general feel of, that flat nose kind of semi truck to make the masked rhino, but it needed to be something specific. I looked at Playmobil. I looked at the Jazzwares Fortnite trucks. Somebody suggested that, but I didn't like it. So I really hunted for a while for the vehicle. The same with the Venom Switchblade. I had to find the right kind of helicopter that almost looked like a plane. To me, it's more of once I get the inspiration, then I go searching for either the figure, like Rebecca said, try to find a buck that's going to get me in that ballpark, or the same with a vehicle, and then I'll go from there. Or vice versa. I'll have an item and say, oh, I can take, this item right here, and I could turn it into this item, something like that. So it just depends on the project. But yeah, I mean, that's the joy of making customs, is you can do whatever you want, as long as you either have the idea in your head or, something physical in front of you that you can manipulate.
So do you guys have organizers or bins of parts and pieces that you've collected, Gribblies, as in the Star Wars and the prop making? Do you just sit there and you look at stuff and be like, hey, I might be able to use that for this, or I might be able to use that? Do you guys have that kind of stuff too?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep. I have a whole bin of loose action figure parts.
I have this weird interior storage room in my house that I actually call Harry Potter's room, because it's kind of like that little room under the stairs. And it's just full of bins and shells and paints and, glue guns and Dremels and, green stuff and whatever, anything. But yeah, I have whole drawers that one is vehicle parts and on and on and on.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's cool that you and Joe both do like the vehicle stuff, because I haven't touched on that yet. Like, I've only done the figures. I wanted to get into some vehicle stuff, so I find it really cool that you and Joe both do those.
Yeah, I touch on some custom play sets, but not too much. Just play sets are so much larger. But I do more vehicles than figures, but I do have kind of a balance of both.
So have you guys, I know in Joe's case, this has certainly happened not just once, but multiple times, but have you guys ever looked at your favorite toy line and said, well, there's this character, or there's this creature, there's a vehicle potentially, and of course the manufacturer, for whatever reason, they're neglecting it. They haven't made it. You've seen pictures of it, or you've heard about it, but they haven't made it as an actual thing. What would, for each of you, what have you tackled where you made the thing and then some point later they actually made a real licensed version and you were just like, motherfucker?
No comment. You want to get upset? You want this shit to start right now? So here we go. It's going to happen again.
Here it goes.
Newt did the same kind of thing years ago.
Good. I want to hear Rebecca's first. Go on, Rebecca. What you got to say?
Well, mine wasn't an action figure. It was a little sculpture I made of the little worm guy from the Labyrinth. And I wasn't the only person making them. A couple people on Etsy were making them. But mine was a certain scale, and it looked a certain way. And then Think Geek came out. Yeah, I'm going to throw names. I don't give it.
Go ahead. Do it.
Think Geek came out with one that looked an awful lot like mine. It had the exact same scale as mine, and I'm just like, okay. Think Geek was terrible. Like somebody's job at Think Geek. That was it, right? Think Geek.
Yeah, I think
was
so.
it?
I think it was
Okay.
Think Geek. Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't want to make it, but somebody's job there is going on Etsy and seeing what everybody else is making.
Exactly.
Because so many things.
Yeah. So yeah,
there.
they did that with Last Unicorn. They did
Yeah.
that with
And it looked just like
Labyrinth
another
Worm.
lady's last unicorn statue. It's like they didn't even try to make it look like their own thing.
They did the door knockers from Labyrinth. There were several Labyrinth things they were hitting.
And I will put up pictures here.
Yep.
My situation be kind of slightly different. I mean, there's been tons of characters from Masters of the Universe that, were never made into figures back in the day, and I made them, of course, and eventually when Mattel makes them, it's like, now that's a no-brainer, so I won't say nothing about that. But we'll get to, like, I don't know, some
I'll show
names.
pictures.
Well, just a couple. We'll get to pictures and names eventually, but like when it came to the mysterious Wind Raider pilot on the William George poster, the blue guy flying it, I called him Sky High when I was just a kid. It was a nickname I had. That was just the gimmick, the name gimmick. He's flying high in the sky. And years later comes the internet, and I gave my story about him, gave the name. I did some really horrible customs when I first started off doing it. And then years later, when Classic started making all those amazing Masters of the Universe figures, here came that Wind Raider pilot with the name Sky High. No credit to me. Of course, I didn't come up with, like I said, the whole idea of the custom, because you only had the upper part, but I went with them, did stuff, but that was my name. But that's one thing. But now let's go to the thing that I made almost 11 years ago. Now you picture being a kid. Picture Sicily, 1920. No, no, just like I said,
you were a kid then.
That's right. I'm an old son of a bitch. No, but just picture it. Like I said, you're a kid who didn't take a random tiger, just paint it blue when you're a Masters of the Universe fan, and say Faker Cat. Really easy to say. So I'm not going to take credit on something called Faker Cat. But I will take something on credit called Copycat, which was a cybernetic version where I'm sculpting in cybernetics to the legs, the face to show damage, having chrome, having metal. Doing that for 11 years in the He-Man community, catching on so much to where a lot of the customizers started doing it. But respectively, they always said, hey, I was inspired by Joe Amato. It's like, no problem. You want to make your own? Make your own. But I had my name Copycat. Then you fast forward tons of years later, here comes Origins. And what do they have? They have something called Duplicate. Like,
But they slipped.
But they slipped.
did.
In an interview with Dan over there on YouTube. The guy that's the manager behind that brand called their Duplicate Copycat. And Dan had to catch him on it. He's like, don't you mean duplicate?
Yeah, that was
like,
hilarious.
Yeah, it's like, I thought you guys came up with this
I was
idea
watching
all
it.
by
It's like,
yourselves.
oh, no, they didn't.
Exactly. It's like, again, the people think I was trying to sue. I'm not going to try to sue Mattel. It's like just a little credit. They'll say, yeah, we're inspired by Joe Amato. Don't act like, oh, we'd never seen his work. Oh, we don't know nothing. Yeah, we coincidentally came up with the same concept. It's like, that's when things can get aggravating. But then you'll get people say, well, Joe, you're actually taking their stuff. It's like, well, in a way, not really. Because that thing I did when I was a kid first painting a random cat, that wasn't Mattel's brand. That was a random cat. And then years later doing this for a living, sure, I'm using stuff that might have been, from the vintage line, classics, even loyal subjects, and other random cats with my copycat idea. But it's a vision that was never, ever existing in the world of Masters of the Universe, in comics, cartoons, nothing. And then they do it. They say they didn't copy me, but then they use the name. But otherwise, I'm still fine with it. I'm glad people got their duplicate. That's cool. But it's not hard just to say, hey, we were inspired by Joe Amato. Or just say, hey, you want to fucking work with us? I'll work with you. Let me come on board. I'll give you guys $100.
Exactly.
It's like what Rebecca was saying. Instead of Google searching, because that's what people are doing. Google searching, hey, that's cool. Oh, it's catching on in the fandom. Look at these
the person's job, I swear, the person's job who's like, come up with something cool. Okay, I'm going to go to Google.
Yeah.
Instead of hiring somebody like you who comes up with this stuff. It's like...
Even and another thing, as bizarre as it seems, because some of the people that not only work for Mattel, but work on the new He-Man cartoons as well, as we know, look on my wall and a lot of the stuff I do. I did something silly called Beast Cat. It was Beast Man as a cat. Just a silly, fun little concept that works as a toy and a figure for customers who want stuff. But as for being in a comic or a cartoon, I'd never want it because it sounds ridiculous. And then, strange enough, in that new Revelations cartoon, Evelyn turns Beast Man into a Beast Dog, but it's like, it's strange. You guys were looking at my wall like my Beast Cat, so it would have been
to be just different in enough.
And
right,
he's
just
not kidding.
One
of the producers of the show was following Joe.
Exactly.
Like, here's Dr. Pepper, here's Dr. Thunder.
Exactly. It's like, hey, let's make him a dog instead of the cat. Nobody will be the wiser. And like I said, logically, what sense does that make? If the power of Grayskull is turning you from your form into a bigger version, he wouldn't become a dog or a cat. It's like John was saying and others said, he'd become like a big King Kong sumbitch. Beastman would have been a giant thing like that, not a dog, but whatever. So yeah, there's some of those things. Why do you guys always got to get me worked up? Now I do have to rub my chest. Oh, God.
So that's the triggering device. What about you, Chad? Because I've seen you combine Transformers and G.I. Joe, and on the rare occasion, we know that they share a universe thanks to the comics and whatnot. Right. But have you seen any of your stuff migrate its way over from something that you've made to like, oh, that's become a thing now? Or
no, I haven't seen anything like that at all. I just
you haven't done this yet. You haven't done son of a bitch.
No, I haven't gotten the Joe treatment. No, I'll just take a random tank, and I'll do a color match, and bam, I made Warpath, and things like that. And I just do stuff like that. There's no way I'm gonna get anywhere near Rebecca or especially Joe's situation. I'm down here. So what, Joe? I gotta say.
Go ahead.
Say, Joe, and John, I don't care if you cut this out or not, but you and I have never talked before today, Joe. But I've known your whole situation and these stories that you just told for a long time.
Oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know that.
And I'm not even a Motu guy, like at all. Like, yeah, I grew up with it, and there's still a special place in my heart for Masters of the Universe. I don't collect it, I don't customize it, but man, I've known your name for a long time because of that whole deal with you.
Wow.
So,
it's weird. I mean, I didn't know that. It's different.
Yeah. So, I mean, customizers are customizers. And so I first started hearing about your name, and then it was like, oh, well, did you hear about this? And I was like, what the fuck?
Wow.
So anyway.
Well, I guess we got to stick together, but I appreciate that. Yeah, customizers stick together, not even knowing each other. But
oh yeah, and it's like it's parallel. You know what I mean? It's just parallel design. Bullshit. Yeah. So anyway, you can cut that out, John. I just wanted to say that.
That's fun. So what we're talking about goofy names. The cool thing is each of you. So we have like Princess of Power, we have Masters of the Universe, we have G.I. Joe. You guys, what are the most ridiculous names for characters that you can think of? Because each of those properties, they would do that weird name thing. We're like, okay, well, here's their play feature, and we're going to name them off that. Or there's the one thing in their background or their origin story, and we're going to name them after that. So can you name some ridiculous character names?
For me, I'll be honest, I never looked at the He-Man or She-Ra names as weird because it it just matched the gimmick, unlike some of the current shit where they're trying to do stuff. It's like, you guys work for Mattel and you just don't understand the name gimmick, and you're making these names that are just kind of out there or just don't blend or gel well. But I never had a problem with like how you see people mocking with Fisto. As a kid, you did not.
Yeah, exactly.
That was never in our brains. It was like, this is a guy with a big fist that'll knock your head off. It's like, I get it. Fisto, Orko, all these other ones, Jitsu. We get the gimmick. But, when you become an adult and some people just want to get cynical about it, they're like, oh, this is funny and silly. I know what he's doing with that fist. And then, of course, it becomes an ongoing joke, and then that ruined it in the Revelation cartoon with the stupid joke that made it. But I don't know. I guess I never seen issues with any of the He-Man characters or She-Ra. It just worked.
Yeah.
Okay. That line was always designed with that whole tongue-in-cheek, mecha neck. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's, I mean, the play feature, the gimmick, it matches their name. I mean, that's
Crackers the Clown. That's a dumb name.
Okay, that little bastard. You're right. Okay, I agree. If one that's annoying, it's that Crackers the Clown.
There you go.
One thing, it's not about the toys, but I never liked the name of Lookie's people. I always thought that was kind of
the conceals, like concealing themselves.
Yeah, that's kind of lame. But I don't know why I didn't.
Maybe the names with Lassie and Poppy.
I'm really impressed, but not surprised that you know that, Joe.
Oh, like, well, hey, I've made Lassie, I made Poppy, I made all those customs too for people. I was doing a lot of the conceals. That's how I had to know it. I'll have pictures of those too to show sometime. Those were real crude. That was some of my early work. Woo, it was rough, real rough.
Yeah, it's hard to look back on some of your older stuff.
Yeah,
I'm like,
you're lucky I don't grab that.
I've learned how to paint a lot better since then.
We'll show that later, though. Well, you guys will, it'll
be in G.I. Joe, they had several where you're just like, really? There's a character that I had, like, I favored the more realistic looking Joes, and like, I guess my moderate level of, well, not moderate, my level of customization was back in the day. I would get a Joe that I liked the design, but he was like, oh, I hated the colors, like Airtight or Crazy Legs, those kind of guys were just like, oh, overall good design. It's just I got to get rid of this red, I got to get rid of this yellow, and I would just paint them khaki or green or camouflage. But there was one guy called Hit and Run.
Yeah.
And he was a light infantryman. And he was really cool looking. And he was called that. Why? Why was he called Hit and Run?
Please don't tell me he slapped somebody and ran away. Like
no, his family was killed in a car accident. So that's like his code name. It's like that's like, why would you call yourself that?
Good God!
Well, it's like Snake Eyes in the new Snake Eyes movie. Called himself Snake Eyes because his dad rolled Snake Eyes with the dice, and the dude shot him.
It's stuff like that.
Oh my God! Is that what they did?
Yeah, we're not going to talk about that movie because I'll keep going.
Yeah, we're not going to mention that or Revelation on the show.
Yeah, the Hit and Run. That's hilarious.
No, there was several. And that naming gimmick that they had, and I, being a more casual fan of Masters of the Universe. Some of the stuff, I see what they did. They named it so that kids could remember it. It's almost like you had a 7 or 10-year-old name the stuff. You're like, oh, okay, Tommy, here's a guy, and when you push him back into his body and then push this button, his head rams into stuff. What do you want to call him, Tommy? Oh, well, he's a man and he rams stuff. He's Ram Man. Done. All right, thanks, Tommy. Next. And it's like, well, what about this guy? What about this guy? And G.I. Joe was kind of the same way. Like they gave him, it's like, oh, here's your bioweapons expert. And he's called Airtight. This guy's got a flamethrower. He's Blowtorch.
I could see myself being a G.I. Joe character since I shop at Dollar Tree. I'd be like Cheapskate.
Exactly. That's how it works. That's exactly how it works.
Oh, we should give us all G.I. Joe names.
Right? Barbecue.
Shipwreck. Exactly. Yep. That's
Keel Hall.
So do you guys feel like your customs, you're filling a void that exists in those toy lines?
Let me answer the question.
Yeah.
Soldier is the dumbest G.I. Joe name ever, and he's a flamethrower trooper, like just as a Real American Hero was ending. Ice Cream Soldier, and he's bright yellow and orange. If you've never seen him,
that's his name. Ice Cream Soldier. Are you serious?
Ice Cream Soldier.
Wow.
Where they stopped trying at that point, right?
Wow.
Yep. Yeah. There's a
figure like I can't even make a custom of him. He's just that bad. Like I just look at him, like the figure's design, like aesthetics, the helmet, the web gear looks kind of cool, but when I look at him, I'm like, I don't. Maybe in like 5 or 10 years, I'll probably get around to it, but I have no desire to make a custom Ice Cream Soldier because he's still going to be called Ice Cream Soldier.
So there's a cartoon that I love called The Venture Brothers, and the creators of it, God, they make fun of everything in pop culture, from Super Friends to David Bowie to Marvel Comics, and they had their own version of G.I. Joe, and it's called OSI. The Office of Secret Intelligence, and they said because they were mimicking everything. Instead of Cobra, it was Sphinx and all this other stuff. They even recreated the intro to G.I. Joe, but they said when they were trying to create their own characters, they were actually Googling and going through the names and the rosters of, we got to find characters that don't exist. We can't use pre-existing character names. And they're sitting there, and one person's on the computer, and the other person's just shouting out bullshit names. And they're like, "Hey, look up such and such." And he's like, "Okay, believe it or not, it's taken." Okay, and then throw out another bullshit name. So they came out with, they had Shuttlecock, who was an astronaut that had a badminton racket. They had another guy called Tank Top, and this is funny because Joe will know this. They had a guy named Tank Top who was a big black guy, and that he had an armored vest, and he had a cannon on one shoulder, and it looked like he was half man, half tank. Who else? They had a guy called Afterburner who had like his face got burned off by jet exhaust. Who else? Yeah, it's this. They did the same thing where it's these ridiculous names.
GoBots and Psykill.
Yes, exactly. Yep. So, do you guys, with the customs that you're making, do you feel like you're filling a particular niche that the IP holder isn't doing? Yeah. Like Newt, I know way back when you're like they never made a Shadow Weaver, and you wanted that.
That was before classics, of course. Yeah, because I wanted, I always wanted a She-Ra that looked like She-Ra from the cartoon, and so some of my first customs were the She-Ra figures, but making them look like they did in the Filmation show. And of course, later they came out with that, and that was before custom or classics, of course. So, yeah, I think so. And there's things like there aren't any fire and ice toys, so I'm making fire and ice toys for myself just because I want them.
Yeah,
now they'll come out with some fire and ice toys.
Oh, I'll guarantee. Yeah, once they see it. No, but you're right. There's always those things that you were wishing would have been made. I mean, hence like when I did make Imp, because we never had an Imp figure back in the day, and then I was making the Twiggets. The first carded figures I was making were Evil Seed, Lizard Man, and Malaktha, because I was like 3 awesome characters that never were turned into figures. And one still hasn't been turned into a figure. I still don't I'm sorry. I still don't understand it. Make Malaktha. Everybody wants them. What's so hard to believe with that? It's just, do it. Make them. I've made them in Vintage. I'm doing them in Origins. I did a Classics one. Whatever. But, yeah, so there's all these things that you wanted to see that you always wonder, why wouldn't they make? And I was doing some stuff with Friday the 13th. I'm still dumbfounded that they haven't made a part 8 of Jason from Jason Takes Manhattan.
Really?
Yeah, and here's the weird thing. Their excuse, and I remember back in the day, it was when, I think it was when McFarlane Toys, maybe it was when McFarlane Toys were doing like a lot of the figures, and I think there was a thing where you could send in suggestions or questions and ask like, will you ever make a part 8? And they said, no, because that movie wasn't good. Nobody'd want the figure. And I typed back, because it was an immediate email response that I sent right back. I was like, trust me, figures in movies, they won't always go hand in hand. I said, what do I mean by this? Every time a Jason figure is released, he sells out. Even if the movie, in a lot of people's opinions, was considered crap. Like, think of Part 5. That's not everybody's favorite. We've gotten Roy. We got him a couple different times. Jason X, that wasn't everybody's favorite. We got him from that. We even got Jason from Jason Goes to Hell. I was like, Part 8, yeah, might not have been everybody's favorite. I still love it. But it's like, that is a cool design. I was like, we like having all different versions of certain characters. And Jason,
the completionist. Yep.
Yeah, he looks great in every different version. And that is a unique, wet, slimy look, that yellow mask. It's a distinct look, and they still haven't made it. And it's mind-blowing. So, yeah, I mean, I get a satisfaction of giving characters life that never have been made before.
Rad. I have this weird affinity. I'm sorry I keep doing this. I have allergies right now. I have this weird affinity for the Joe Transformer crossover stuff, right? I made the Seeker Jets. So I have the Soundwave San Diego Comic-Con Hiss Tank. I have the Shockwave San Diego Comic-Con Hiss Tank. I was like, why wasn't there a Megatron Hiss Tank? I made one of those. So that's kind of what I do. Like a lot of crossover stuff is really what I do. The Cobra Aspid, which is the helicopter that was used predominantly in the very early issues of the original Marvel comics. Customizers have made those, but for some reason Hasbro never made one. So things like that, just like filling gaps. The Steel Kaiju, which is the large robotic, Cobra with human limbs. I don't know. Right?
Yeah, I know exactly what
from
you're
the
talking
Sunbow series. Yeah, so you see a lot of people have made those. I basically just make a lot of crossover stuff. I have a lot of custom Hiss tanks. So I made a Battle Android Trooper Hiss tank. A lot of different environments. So Cobra never really did a lot of desert stuff. So I made a desert Hiss tank. Just kind of things like that. Just filling gaps in my collection for me.
Crossovers are cool.
Yeah, it's just kind of how I approach it. But like You know, Beachcomber, right? He's a Transformer Autobot Dune Buggy. So I was like, well, I'm going to take one of my 95, you know, Walmart retro Ostrikers, boom, and I just made a Beachcomber. So,
nice.
You know, just things like that.
So, yeah, in last weekend stream, you said you've bought or you still have 30 Hiss tanks.
Yeah, I have a lot. They're all up here on the walls.
Wow.
I have 2 whole shelves that wrap around a corner of this room, and it's just Hiss tanks.
I was about to say something. I'm like they keep re-releasing the Hiss tank. We get it. Like, stop. Like, who is buying? It's like find a different mold to a different vehicle and come out with them. Like, who is buying every iteration? You got to have the blue one. You got to have the black one. You got to have the one with 3 guns. Got to have the one. It's like, stop.
Yeah. Yeah. It's an iconic design.
Them, though.
What'd you say?
You know? You're doing different stuff with them, though. It's not just no.
Yeah, awesome. But I'll take the Rise of Cobra Hiss tank, right? The Rock Cobra Hiss tank that came out, and I'll do stuff with that. I'll take the Retaliation Hiss tank, do stuff with that. I have several customs of the Hiss 2, right? So it's not just the Hiss 1 and the Hiss 3. It's a lot of different versions of it. It just depends on what I want to make. So like the Megatron Hiss that I made was the Retaliation version because it matches the Shockwave Hiss tank. Things like that.
So I'll start out with you, Chad, but what do you guys listen to when you're sitting down and you've made time to like work on stuff? What's playing in the background? What do you have going on in the background as you're working on stuff?
YouTube videos.
Of
just like,
or like,
it's generally stuff like the Jay and Rob Toy Show, or sometimes I'll put on, you know, like a series. I'll pull something up on like Amazon Prime, stuff like that. I don't really jam out to music. I generally don't do music. I just put on like people talking in the background. Sometimes a podcast. It just depends.
Yeah, I do that too sometimes.
Yeah,
like,
I don't want to jam out
music,
because I'm really focusing, and I'll be like just jamming, and then I'll put a sticker on like that. So.
Yeah, I can't listen. Yeah, I can't listen to music and I can't listen to anything new. I just put on repeats of old TV shows or movies that I've seen 100 times because it's like comforting to me and just makes me relax. But if there's something new, I'm inclined to want to turn to look like, hey, what the fuck's going on? You
something you have to pay attention to.
Right, you lose focus. So it's like there's never music because I get too worked up. You know, I'm already too emotional all the time. So it's like I can't have music that's going to get me hyped up. I was like, just put on some random repeats of movies and TV shows. And that's it.
Yeah, those are always fun. I do listen to some synthwave music because there's no lyrics to it. It's just like the continuous beat kind of thing to it. And
yeah,
I do like listening to music here and there, but I also put on a lot of YouTube videos or just put in DVDs of old TV shows that I like.
Yeah.
John, I was a sticker in the vehicle yesterday, and I had your guys' video of Rebecca's Masters of the Universe movie She-Ra costume and your many faces.
Oh,
I had that on in the background
thanks.
while I was just finishing the vehicle.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
But when I work on stuff, when I'm making costumes or I'm out in the shop or something like that, I'll put on music or synthwave or something like that. But I mean, I know exactly what you're talking about, where I'll put on repetitive stuff where I don't need to pay attention to it. But usually if it's music, I do like stuff that just sounds like it's pulled out of a video game. You know, where it's just repetitive. It's got, you're like, yeah, I'm in a video game and I'm just doing a thing. I'm doing a process.
Yeah. Yeah, we both work together, so it's like we listen to the same stuff. So we like the synthwave, 80s synthwave sounds.
That's cool.
Is that something that like has beats? Because I'm inclined to always want to dance when I'm hearing something. Oh, see, I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
They're usually, it's not like all rock out beats. It's just like a continuous kind of beat, like John's saying, video game music.
Yeah, so it doesn't have lyrics most times. It's just it's like you put a video game on pause and you went to go get a drink and you can hear it in the background just going to.
But we do listen to some music, like we do listen to Depeche Mode and Duran Duran and just our 80s mix.
Yeah. Yep.
I'm too animated. I'd be like messing up while I'm sculpting because I'm getting into this or something. It's like
I'd be getting down like
Bernie's. Joe's like Weekend at Bernie's too, where he's got like the little like zombie or the voodoo curse, and he has to start moving.
Right. I remember that. Christ, yeah, no music for me.
So if you could invent a material or a tool that would help you with your customs, like you're confronted with an issue time and again as you're making your stuff. Is there ever anything that you wish you could make or somebody else would invent and solve that problem for you? Is there
an epoxy that maybe would set really fast and hard? Because you know how it is, and Rebecca knows sometimes you have to wait. It's like, damn it, I can't get nothing on.
Yeah, it's like just get hard already. Jesus.
Yeah, Santa Joe moment. Oh my God, that's my shtick. Oh, here we go. Till next time. No,
I've never heard that before.
That's the intro right there. Just get hard already.
All right. Well, I don't know. Let's say. But really, just get harder, quicker, as Rebecca said. But if that could happen, that'd be great. So we don't have to wait for everything to set for layers. Jesus Christ.
Anything else?
I want teeny tiny like sanding bits, because it's so hard to sand certain areas. Like on the figure I'm working on right now, I was trying to sand the eyelids that I sculpted onto it. So I just want like teeny, like microscopic little like sanding bits to sand little places like that that are so hard to get into. And I'm just like, I wish I had like a toothpick size sander that I could just get in there and like sand stuff on.
Stole my answer.
Oh, really?
100%.
Because it's a pain in the ass to try and get in certain little areas with the sanding.
Well, you're either sanding with a sanding block, sandpaper, or some kind of sanding something on a Dremel. Like sometimes it's almost like it's just you're too forceful with it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and so
especially
like
with
a very
the
fine,
like
some kind of like a shark's tooth texture, like a sanding pick or something like that. Just like really, really, because I deal with a lot of minute corners. And, and I really just want to get in there. And then I get my Dremel, and you're just like, pull this thing out. I'm like, no, that's not going to work. And then you get paper, and I'm folding real small bits of paper. And no matter how you fold sandpaper, you still have other edges going like that. So 100%, just like something very small and precise. Absolutely.
I think, and we discussed this a little while ago, my thing is a paint that will stick and stay. Even though you move your figure in the joints, you don't lose your custom paint job in those joints. That would be my thing. Some way to either paint or dye the plastic or the material and not have, because you're adding a thickness to it, and the tolerances that the toy companies come up with for that joint or whatnot is already set. And since you're adding, there's little microns of thickness on there.
Yeah, if you could cut out the step of like sanding the joints to make them smaller, like what I do.
Yeah, you can sand the joints. I've actually been messing around just in the very beginning stages of dyeing figures.
I've not done that yet, but I'm tempted to.
It works going darker.
Yeah,
you don't always go darker.
You have to
right?
go darker.
That's the problem.
Once you go black.
Yeah. Sorry, that was kitty. Yeah, kitty.
Yeah, mine's in here running around now too.
So, what's your favorite phase? Like you're working on the custom. What's your favorite phase in making a custom, and why is it painting?
Why is it painting? It's actually not painting, John.
Is it really?
Mine is painting.
No.
Yeah. Well, yeah. What's your favorite? Like when you guys are working on these things, what's your favorite part in the process?
Joe?
I guess my favorite part is almost when it's complete and I'm seeing that vision that you're wanting to bring to life. It's like, wow, it's coming to fruition. After you do so much and smoothing out and making some really cool arm or helmets, face where it may be, and it's like, wow, that's damn close to being done. And then when you paint it, it's complete, it's like that's even better. But there's something about when you get the sculpting just right, because I'm not a person that does 3D sculpting. I have absolute respect for the people that do that. That's amazing. But I'm doing it with hand, and you got to get it right. You mess it up, it's like son of a bitch, especially when it's stuff that sets and it's rock hard and maybe it's awkward. It's like, damn it. Then you have to get into, like you said, maybe I have to sand it down, sculpt a little more over. But when you get it perfect, and you're like, that's exactly how I envisioned. It's a great feeling.
Mine's, I like the entire process. I mean, I'm sure to an extent we all do, but mine's when all of my pieces, no matter how many pieces we're talking, when they're all done, they're all prepped, they're all painted, everything's ready to go, and I have everything kind of laid out.
Yeah.
I just see it, and in my mind, right, that because in everything that we do, you know, as customizers, that spatial intelligence is really important. Like, because, you know, A goes to B and A and B together go to C and D and things like that. It's when it's all laid out and like, you know, my base colors are done and all my pieces parts are perfect. And I'm going to start just building that final product.
Yep.
I'm a big fan of that stage. And then also, when the final product is done, and then comes the stickers and the weathering and all those little details where, you know, you could do 5 washes on a figure or a vehicle, or, you know, dry brush 4 colors and things like that. And no one's really going to see all that time and attention that you put into it, but you know it's there. So those are kind of probably my 2 best times when making a custom. But when it's all laid out and I'm just like, you know, I love that feeling.
Yeah, I love that feeling too.
Yeah.
Because I'm not a big fan of like the part, taking it apart, sanding the joints down, boiling it, not boiling it, but like boiling it or heat gunning it, you know, taking it apart. And you're just like, it's just that messy phase, getting it all together. But then once that is all done and you're putting it back together and it's got, like you were saying, base coat on it, and it's like, okay, I'm getting that vision's coming to life now. Yeah.
I can't stand the stripping off the stickers, gluing all the crud off of there.
Yep, standing down. Oh, I gotta stand.
Washing it.
It's supposed to be there. Yeah.
That's just that meticulous. That's the necessary evil part. Like, I have to do this. Like, I got to get it down to, you know, some sort of a workable product, but I bought this incomplete, beat up old vehicle with shitty paper stickers on it, and paper stickers are terrible. You know what I mean? So you're just like working it forever to get it off. And then,
it leaves that sticky residue on everything.
Yeah.
It's like permanently on there. God, yeah.
That's kind of my least favorite part.
I always liked when I get a project to the priming phase, just seeing it all in one color. You know, especially after you've applied, you know, with my stuff, Bondo or glazing putty or some other kind of filler, and you've taken this thing and it's now this awful hodgepodge of all these different colors, and then you finally primed it, and these things look so statuesque because it's all gray. And you can see all the shadows and all the definition and all the lines, and there's nothing competing for attention because of the colors. I like that phase where you just get to see it in a kind of a statue form. You know, I admire it then, and then there's a little bit of trepidation where it's like, okay, it looks great, and now I'm going to take it into paint, and please God, don't let me screw this up.
Yeah, that's that stepping off point where, like you said, you have something that you put all this time and work into, and now it's sterile. You know, it's almost like when you look outside after it's snowed and everything is like sterile and clean, and you're like, I'm going to take this nice sterile, like at this point it's not screwed up. And now I'm going to, here's my stepping off point.
Yep.
And then I just wasted it.
Yep. So, how do you think, doing what you guys do, how do you think it makes you look at things differently? Like since you guys take things apart and put it back together, or you add your own artistic touches to things, does it make you look at toys and other things differently? Do you pick up stuff and you're like, oh, I don't like where they put the seam on that? Or does it make you look at movies and you're like, why did they make the costume that way? Do you look at things, do you feel it, you look at things differently than a normal person?
Yeah, I look at everything differently, unfortunately. I mean, the whole process of even making the figure and getting everything to where, you know, because I make like the custom card backs and I put bubbles over them and I seal them up so they can actually look like they were right there at the store. So I go into stores, and thank goodness everybody knows me now in most of these places, but at one time I looked like I was casing the joint to steal some shit, because I'm walking through there and I'm staring at things, and I do my head cock that you guys like to mock sometimes, and I'm looking, and I've had people come up like, "Do you need help finding something?" I was like, "Oh, I'm looking at these bubbles." They said, "What bubbles?" I was like, the thing that's covering the item here." Like, why is that? And then I explained, well, I'm looking at this to envision, is this something that's going to go over the figure? Will it be the perfect size? So I'm looking at any random product throughout a store and buying stuff. I bought so many things that have no use in my house, and then I just throw it away because, hey, look, I got a bubble. Now I got to clean it.
You need a blister for it.
Yeah, I need a blister. And then I look at, figures themselves. Like, well, that looks a little strange there. Why would they have done it like that? Why couldn't they have done it like this? I look at things bizarrely. Like I'm fucking laughing. But
I'm just imagining Joe in the store. And of course, I'm just imagining you with your Module Lock mask on. Like, I'm looking at the bubbles. It's like, what bubbles?
There's no clue. I'm looking, what? The bubbles? The bubbles, man.
The bubbles, man.
I've had that where and I've had it also where I was like, I'm looking for body parts, you know, because I'm so used to saying that, but others don't understand that. Like, wait, what are you talking about? No, for figures, the body parts, you know. Like, oh, okay. It sounds deranged, but no, you do. You look at everything differently, and even figures, and they wonder why they did something in a movie. And when the toy comes out, like, why wouldn't they have done it like this? Why is, you know, like some of the articulation seems off. Sometimes the face design, you know, it's like, why did they choose to go with that? Why wouldn't they have done this? So, you look at all sorts of things in just a completely different way.
Yeah. Yeah, I just have to agree with that.
And then Ted's there. Ted's at the store, too. He's cocking his head.
No, and I do. And, like, you know, now G.I. Joe, G.I. Joe's kind of a lost brand right now. Like, it's getting a resurgence, but no real vision. Like they'll go down this path, and then it doesn't really get any traction, and then they're making a lot of changes to everything right now. So, you know, I'll see a figure on card, especially with that retro 4-inch, which, you know, they're not retro. It was just, you know, they take 50th anniversary figures and slap them on a new card, that Walmart exclusive, and so I'm looking at a version 1 Snake Eyes on this card back, and it's version 2 Snake Eyes in the blister, and I'm like, why did you do that? You know, and then there's like this vomitorium of weapons. Like, he doesn't need 4 knives. You know, it's cool for me because then I get extra knives, but at the same time, like, the flow of the figure on the card, and G.I. Joe card art has always been, you know, very gorgeous. And they put these giant blisters on them, and they're covering up the art, and they got the wrong art on the wrong cards, and sometimes. So I'll look at.
You're like, you're supposed to be the professionals.
Yeah, it's like, you're Hasbro. Like, why do you have version 2 Snake Eyes figure on a version 1 card? And they've done that numerous times. I don't understand. You know, they have the art of the Cobra officer, and it's the Cobra trooper in the pack.
Yep.
Just like, I don't know who's driving that bus, but sometimes it just drives me up the wall.
When I'm shopping for costume parts, and I'll have to look for very specific, sometimes electrical fixtures, sometimes plumbing parts, a lot of times plumbing parts, and I'll go in there, and you know, you might go into some place where they have very attentive sales associates, and they're on you, and they're asking you 20 questions, and you walk in there like, and they're like, what can I help you find? And you're like, well, I'm looking for a corrugated hose, something between about a 1 to probably like 1 1/4 inch inside diameter. And they're like, what's it going in? Is this like a sump pump? Is this for your pool? Is it for? And you're trying to avoid answering that question.
I don't. I love doing it, John. I go into Menards because I was needing chains for my Anti-Eternia Battle Cat. So I'm looking around, and I found, of course, you know, the little thing that goes in for when you're doing the toilet and you got to fix the thing.
Mm-hmm.
Down there, and it comes with the nice chain. Yeah. So I was asking, I was like, I need a certain kind of chain, though. It can't be long. Like, well, come on over here. Let me show you. This is what we got for our toilets. And like, we got these ones, and this chain's like, no, you get something smaller. Well, I mean, what's your issue with your toilet? I was like, it's not for a toilet. I need it for an action figure, and I need this chain. You have it like this. And they're like, what?
It totally throws them off, because the thing, and that's why I try to avoid answering it, because
They get so confused.
Don't you get a sense of just enjoyment of having them look?
Where you're like, oh, well, I'm working on this character, and he's got these two hoses that go here, and the hose diameter looks to be about this big, and it's not a fat corrugation. It's more of
Do you
like
enjoy it a little, John?
And they're like, and they're like,
do.
they're short circuiting, and they're like, what? And it's like, I got it, thanks.
That's the best
Yep.
part.
Yeah. It gets a little.
It's like that meme where it's like,
yeah,
can
like,
I
I know
find
more than
it? I know more than you.
It's exactly that's exactly it. So, as you guys are working on stuff, and you've got your buck or you got your donor body, whatever you want to call it, and you're like, well, I need to apply this and I need to apply that. The character has these attributes to it. How do you balance the design versus articulation? Like, how willing are you to sacrifice articulation on something to actually achieve the design? And this, Joe, I know, like with the 5 POA stuff, you got a lot of liberty to go.
Oh yeah, with vintage figures, it's almost no issue. But when it came to when it comes
Classics.
to when it comes to classics and origins, then you have to be a little more selective. But you could still be clever. Like, I don't have to sculpt something over the elbows most of the time, so it's like I'm pretty safe there. Or the knees, and if I do, it would be something where it's designed where it's just over it. I guess I've never had that issue to where I had to cover something. I think the only time is maybe if like somebody asked me for a preset pose for that arm to where they didn't want it to move. But otherwise, I think at least with the He-Man body styles, it's never had an issue because, again, the armor, you sculpt over the body. The upper part sleeves like here, I can sculpt that, and it's not interfering with anything that's going on with the elbow joints or the knees. Maybe when I did years ago a Shadow Weaver, and I wasn't using cloth to sculpt her lower outfit. I mean, I was actually sculpting it, and then I had parts that were hanging off that were cloth, but that I guess completely eliminated any posing from her legs because I sculpted the dress down. But as you've seen, look at the official Shadow Weavers. You know, there's no legs. You don't have to worry about it. Some cases it works, but pretty much I guess I've been lucky with Masters to where I haven't had that issue about messing up any of the articulation.
Yeah, I had the same one I'm working on right now, which is Azula from Coney, and I'm using the Classics body, and he has the fur going across him like that. I didn't want to mess up that mid-torso articulation, so I dremeled it down a little bit and then just sculpted over top of it so that he can still move, but he has that sculpted part underneath him.
Yeah. Yeah, you're just kind of rigid a little.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. I don't really have that problem with G.I. Joes. Generally, if I'm gonna do anything additive to it, I try to stay away from that because their elbow articulation is a pocket. Like the forearm, right? It plugs into the upper arm, so I know I can go over, and I'm generally not going to have a problem with any kind of elbow articulation. I just try to make sure that I don't pack so much shit on their torso that I can't get any articulation across body. But Joe's, even though they're very articulated, they're not really good at the crossbody because they don't have that really good butterfly. They don't have the butterfly hinge on the 4-inch Joes. You know, in the 6-inch they do, but they have those unsightly hinge pins in them. But yeah, the 4-inch Joes, I just don't go crazy, you know, and I'm good.
So, what kind of how would you rate articulation? How important to you guys as not just as customizers, but as collectors? Like, where is it for posability and for, you know, like putting on your shelf? Because most of us, we just sit there and we'll strike a pose and we'll put it on the shelf, and then a couple weeks later, maybe a month later, we'll walk by it and then we'll change the pose, this and that. How important is it articulation versus design, though? Just as in collecting as a toy collector?
I prefer the design over articulation. To me, I don't need a crazy articulation in my toys. I think Classics had the perfect amount of articulation for me.
But I mean, the thing is, you don't want like early McFarlane crap where it was, yes, it was 5 POA.
Those
but
kind
it was,
oh god.
It was like, oh, his arm can do that. You know,
yeah.
That's how some of my Jason figures are. We're the same thing. You're right. Like that. No, that doesn't work at all. And
why even bother putting in the articulation if
that makes no sense?
Even the old Power of the Force figures, Chad. Remember, it's like, yeah, they looked better, but the thing was, they were still kind of forced in this ridiculous or semi-ridiculous pose.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll definitely take design over articulation, but you know, there is a tail on that dog. You have to be able to do something with them, right? Otherwise, they go from toys or action figures or dolls or however you want to articulate that to a statue.
A statue, yep.
Right.
Yeah, there's a perfect balance. I mean, classics, I always say when it comes to Masters, had that perfect balance. As much as people don't even like, you know, I'm not saying as much as they don't, but I know everybody's not a fan of Origins. They have a good balance. But then you get to some of the figures to where, when we were talking about the Masterverse style, they're adding all these extra bits of articulation. Again, I know that some people like posing and all sorts of crazy things. That's great. But sometimes there's too much, because then it makes the aesthetic of the whole figure look ugly. It's what Rebecca and I were saying. It was funny. We almost had the same experience when we were talking about the new She-Ra they showed. Yeah, she looks pretty good. The face is awkward, but this under the bust into the upper midsection posing for her, it don't look right, because when you move her to the side, her emblems
now her emblem's all off.
Right.
Yeah,
nothing matches. But when you
like,
look
just
at,
make it one piece. You don't
right.
Not
Like
every part needs to move.
Yeah, it's like the WWE figures we're looking at. Like, I looked at Carmella, perfect. She doesn't have that cut there. I was like, you could do that. And sometimes there's an extra leg, upper thigh moving, these triple jointed for the knees and elbows, and it makes the figure, unfortunately, look ugly. And the things can get loose through the years. Sometimes all this 32 points of articulation. Then you have figures that are starting to fall apart and they're weak ankles. And it's like, just have a good balance. You know, again, nothing wrong with it, but just not too much. And the design is the most important thing.
What you're saying is you don't need their toes to bend.
Right, yeah, exactly. I don't need that extra shit. It's like, no, just come on, just dial it back a little bit. Have a nice looking figure, have some good poses, and that's all. Goddamn, these kids outside are driving me nuts. They're getting home from school and they're walking by a hall here is screaming. I sound like the old man. Like, I want to say, get off my fucking
We can't
lawn.
hear them on our end.
Little shits. Oh, go ahead.
In some cases, though, I feel like in that She-Ra figure, or in other scenarios like that, the designers needed to look at it and say, why would you put that figure in that pose? What action or what scenario would that character need to like arch back like that, or like bend like that? Like, why would you have that character do
a perfect example, John? And it was the Masterverse Battle Cat. I don't know if you've ever seen that thing with the armor off. God, there's
I know where you're going with that.
The midsection, the upper section. You can turn his body around backwards, and like, when in the world will you pose Battle Cat like this? Did he get like grabbed by a giant and twisted and he's fucking broken in half? You are not going to do this.
Think about how in tooling and design, how much you would save money by not incorporating that.
Yeah, they would have saved a lot by not doing
one of those things. It's like, just look at it logically and say, okay, well, what scenario would that figure or that toy actually need to be in that pose? You know, and it's like, well, if they're never really going to be in that, then why even include it? Just strike it right off the list and then maintain a better looking aesthetic and save yourself money.
Yep.
True. Yeah, the Abdominal Crunch in a lot of the 1/12 scale or 6-inch figures, it's very jarring for me, because just the way they ratchet like that in that abdominal area. And then you get into, like you were talking about, John, you get into the flimsy, like when that Abdominal Crunch is loose and like the figure just wants to kind of fall over. And I see it a lot in some of even my 4-inch figures, like the more modern figures, they have a level of articulation in the hips, and I'll pose them on the stands, you know, because Joe's come with stands, and then the hips do this rock thing, where I'll get it in a pose, and then it'll go back in pose, and it goes, and then it just kind of keeps doing that. I'm like, whatever. I'm sticking you in a vehicle, you know. At that point, it's just too loose.
It's like, Yeah. So we've been researching and trying to find. It's in the 1/6 scale. You can find bodies all day long. You can find like the Fison bodies. You can find jointed bodies. You can find that there's a whole bunch of customization there. You can get different head sculpts, different hair colors, different bust sizes. You can find all that all day long. And slowly that kind of variety is coming in, some in 6-inch. Boss Fight Studios has a whole bunch in 4-inch, and they're terrific looking figures. They come with multiple heads. They'll be already pigmented in, you can get like stark white or stark black or light flesh tone, dark flesh tone, orange, transparent, all this stuff, and it's great. Hasn't reached 6-inch level yet, but do you think that's going to become a thing in which other companies see that, hey, there's a whole bunch of customizers, people like yourself out there, and they're actually going to start making more stuff for folks like you? Do you think that's going to like pick up? Or do you think there's going to be more?
I really hope so. They're so close with those 4-inch figures, and of course I got a bunch being dumb and not reading that there were 4 inches. Like, this is great. Finally, someone's making this. What a game changer. Blank bodies that you can just start painting on. And they're only 4 inches, and they're really cool. But I just make it in 6-inch, please.
That's always awesome. My favorite thing to do is when you find a part, and I'm going to go off the rails for a second, but just kind of going off what you were talking about, Rebecca. You'll find a part on Amazon or something like that, and you'd be like, oh, this thing's perfect. I need like 20 of those. And I ordered a bunch of space shuttles because I needed the boosters and the solid rocket boosters in that fuel tank. And I ordered a bunch of them, and they were all like 2 inches. Useless. So I just got rid of all of them. I have to say that I think Marauder's Gun Runner, they do a really good job with that 4-inch, but it's not the same as Boss Fight, where Boss Fight is designed almost with the customizer, the creator in mind. Marauders, they take like a business approach of it's plug and play. Like, I'll order this upper body and this lower body and this vest and these pouches and this head, and boop, and you make your own figure, but you just push it all together and there it is. Yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot of cool options.
The Valiverse figures are kind of that way too, where you can get a whole bunch of their default grunts or soldiers and sit there and swap heads, swap backpack, swap all that stuff. I'm hoping more companies do that. It's like, oh yeah, you can build your own stuff.
Like a generic buck.
Yes, exactly. I mean,
generic blank bodies, different shapes, different size, more muscular, more slender, more this or that, and simple boxes. I don't want to pay a bunch of money for pretty packaging. Just give me, like those one figures I got. They're packaging I love because it's so simple. It's just a little square tube with a bubble, and you're just like, it's so simple. I don't need it. Especially if you're just going to customize something. You're like, I don't need to fancy box.
The other thing is the price point. If they're not paying for all the box material, they're not paying for the blister pack, they're not paying to do any kind of deco on the figure. Wouldn't you hope that the figures are cheaper? Should we still have to pay? How much were those a piece? They were the 4-inch ones. They were like $16.
$16.
Yeah, can't they be $10 or $12?
Yeah, and then have the 6-inch one be like $16.
I understand they're doing smaller runs, but at the same time, you would hope that, hey, we're doing all the work here.
Yeah.
So if companies started making more stuff, imagine that there's some fictitious company out there. What would you guys like to see if suddenly there was some company out there that was just making blank bodies in various colors? What would you, fantasy, sci-fi, military? What would you guys like to see be made available?
I'd like to see any of those. I just want people to sell just blank bodies for me to sculpt over, because like I said, my least favorite part is taking off, making the body blank for me to work off of, doing the work to take off the hair and sand down this part and that part so that it's just a blank body to go off of. So I just want to make blanks.
Yep, you're right. Just nice bald heads with ears that you can see, that you put your hair on. And don't have to have bracers on every single thing because, as you know, when we're doing our figures, oh, God, we got to have this one without bracers. Almost have to have some. Yeah, if it's just simple enough, like you said, just nothing on them, and that'd work great.
I want to see more bare arms.
Yeah.
Just bare arms. Just give me more bare arms. It's like in the 4-inch scale, finding bare arms is like an act of God. Just give me bare arms.
The same with
And
bare feet.
It's weird. We said at the same time feet. I just want to have those feet. We need characters with feet sometimes. We could do our own boots, our own shoes. We could do that ourselves.
So yeah,
and that's just
that makes you wish that there were. Wow! Could you imagine a place where you could sit there and order the torso and order the arms and order like the various accessories? And I'm seeing it start to happen. I've seen accessory packs where you get a whole bunch of gladiator style helmets or a whole bunch of weapons or a whole bunch of particular armor, mainly fantasy stuff. Or in for weapons, you can see weapons packs for modern weapons. Like NATO, Warsaw, that kind of stuff. But how awesome would that be if it's just like you just add to cart, add to cart, add to cart, add to cart. Well, there's all my pieces I need to make this custom figure. And then when it comes in, I'm snapping it together, popping it together, and like, okay, perfect. I don't have to do as much sculpting, or I don't have to do as much dremeling to remove a watch or shirt sleeves or whatever.
Yeah. And from a military 4-inch figure standpoint, like I do get a lot of that from Marauders, and I can mix and match, Joy Toy this, Boss Fight that, Marauder this, but it would be nice if, Marauders is just a small company, but I would like to see them have more. And when their Vietnam stuff becomes readily available, then I'll get my bare arms. So I'll be good to go then.
Chad, when late 90s, early 2000s, did you jump into the 21st Century Toys when they came out?
No. So I actually got out of toys in like 97, 98. And I was in the military. I'm still in the military. So I was just really focusing on that stuff. So I actually didn't get back into toys until like 2 or 3 years ago.
Because they had, first they came out with they were kind of riding on the shirt tails of G.I. Joe and the whole revival of that, and trying to do the 12-inch figures. And they had, Vietnam figures there. And then later they're like, well, we're going to do 4-inch figures. And they were doing World War II. And you had BF-109s and P-38s and Mustangs and all this stuff in 4-inch scale.
Yeah, I've seen them.
At the time, you could find it everywhere. Like, you could walk into Toys R Us, and it was just loads of them. And now you can't find them, and they cost so much money. I'm sure customizers love that because sit there and change the tail numbers and all that stuff.
Yeah. It's the same with that BBI Elite. Like, you can't find that stuff. I mean, you're going to pay a lot for it, but it's not readily available like it used to be, mid 2000s.
All right. Let me see. Okay, so a lot of times, I from the costuming standpoint, a lot of times we don't share our ideas because as soon as you put that idea out into the world, somebody else is like, hey, I'm going to jump on that. I'm going to make that before you do. So I understand if you don't want to give away all your ideas.
Joe knows all about that.
Yeah.
But do you guys have ideas, or are there...
Hey, I was going to make that.
Are there projects that you guys want to do that have been on the back burner that you can share? Or are there any things that you want to work on that you're like, oh, I can't, eventually I'm going to get to this?
Well, you saw I've already started my Fire and Ice collection, so next thing I'm going to make is Dark Wolf, and then like the whole cast and that, so.
No, I have a lot of commissions coming, but yeah, nothing to really share. But yeah, just a lot of commissions coming up.
Joe can't say because there are people like.
No, I'm not shitting. Anytime I say something,
this is no exaggeration.
Like, they're
just writing it down. They're like, rewind that.
I mean, I won't go into.
You are.
Yeah, isn't it interesting that maybe 9 years ago, almost 10? I sat there and I did, my crossover stuff of taking vintage Masters of the Universe figures and turning them to Jason Voorhees, Michael Myers, Freddy Krueger, and I was putting in these groups of people that work for companies, and they enjoy it. They're like, that's pretty cool. And then I did Lion-O from Thundercats and some others in vintage style 9-10 years ago in that same group. And then years later, something happened. I'm not saying they look, but it's an awful coincidence. Like, interesting. But so I just keep my mouth shut. It's like anything I do, it's like, here we go. I'm not trying to sound like an arrogant dick, but I'm pretty much.
This is your opportunity to bait them in the wrong direction. You can be like Arnold Schwarzenegger to Sly Stallone and be like, hey, yeah, I was thinking about being in that movie, Stop When My Mom Will Shoot.
Right.
And then Sly Stallone takes it, and then
yeah,
you can do that. You can bait them right now and be like, oh yeah, I'm thinking about making this.
Rock Lords.
It's
all about the Rock Lords.
That's right. They're coming back, baby. We're going to bring them back and all these other properties. I'm going to do sectars in vintage style, and I'm going to do sectars in origin style. And let's see if those. When you shit your pants, could you imagine? Because I've done some sectars. I've done Silverhawks. I've done Brave Star, Black Star, everything in He-Man style. But that'd be hilarious if I started doing some sectars. Like, you know what? That'd be cool to see them come back and start tagging everybody. And then a year later for Origins, we got Sectar's license now, a new crossover. I'm not going to say that I did Pighead 2 years ago and everybody was loving it. Interesting. Hey, Sunman returns. And Pighead's coming. But I don't know. That could be arrogant. That could just be, of course, that's just a coincidence, which I know a lot of it, yes, is a coincidence. But
some of it is not.
Some definitely we know is not. Others, yes, it's bound to happen. But yeah, I'll just keep my mouth shut because I'm sure I'll say something great and they're like, we thought of that 6 years ago.
I'm not even just talking about Mattel. I'm talking about certain other customizers out there.
Oh yeah, oh Jesus Christ, I've seen that so many times. Especially the ones where like, hey, you know what? I was thinking that. Or a week later or 2 weeks later, look what I did. Look what I put up on eBay. I've never made nothing like this in my life. But I seen on Joe's page, people were liking it. He's not on eBay no more. Let me fucking put up on eBay. Look what I did all by myself. But I ain't saying nothing. They talk shit about me. I'll say something to them, snarky like. But yeah, boy, like I want to see every customizer succeed. I can't say that enough. But you wish it'd be in return because there's a lot of them that I've helped, given advice. They've all said stuff. They've copied my ideas, and then they talk shit about me. It's like Jesus. So like when I say stuff, it's just basically in defense of myself. They'll act like they're the innocent victim. Hey, well, what happened? I was like, did you want me to pull up all this stuff of what you said and what you've done to me in the past? Do you want this to come out? So I try to be cool. Like people say some stuff. I'm still fine. Do what they want. I hope they're successful, make plenty of money. But
and Joe's got the receipts. Joe's got screen grabs, so watch yourselves.
Yeah, and Rebecca's seen some of them. I got all this shit. Like if they want to play, we'll play. But I try to keep it nice. I want to see people succeed. I can say that as a customizer. I want everybody to do it. But in return, you don't get that. I don't know if you've ever gotten that, Chad, where sometimes people get really weird about that shit. It's like, why?
Yeah. The balance that I see is I just like to share my stuff. And it's not, I'm not trying to be a spotlight ranger or get up on a soapbox or anything like that. I share the love of the creation. Like I took this thing, I made it into this. Cool. I'm just sharing it. Like there's that balance between like sharing with the community or stealing it from you, like in your case, Joe, and then people thinking that you're trying to rub it in their faces. Like it's such a delicate balance. Like I just share it to share it, and I'm noticing now more than before. I either get people sharpshooting me. Oh, well, that doesn't transform. No, well, why would it fucking transform? Like it wasn't supposed to transform. Like if I wanted it to transform, I would have built that into it. Well, now my masked rhino transforms. Masked vehicle, right? It's supposed to do that. I just try to find the balance. Now, recently, when I share things, there's a little trepidation. Like, should I share this? Should I just keep it to myself? Yeah. I'm finding that more often than not because I don't like the ugliness in a lot of communities, especially the collecting community. I like the joy of like inspire other customizers and creators, share ideas with people rather than stealing ideas from people. There's a fine line between the two. But yeah, that's just kind of where I'm living these days.
Yeah, you're right. It's a big community. I mean, how boring would it be if there's only a couple people that did something? I love seeing the visions and ideas that other people come up with. That's what I meant. There's room for just thousands and thousands of people. It's like, do what you want, but just try to show some respect back. Like, I've never had the urge to ever go to somebody's custom page or a thread they did and then hijack and say, yeah, well, you know what? I did this though. It's like, what's the point of that? They did it. They did it. Leave it alone. But it's almost like what they say. If you don't have nothing nice to say, don't say nothing at all. But some people just can't do that. They just have to like poke the bear and then play the victim. But
yeah. I had a conversation with a couple of people on another stream the other day where we were talking about our collections and how we display our collections. And I'm like, all my stuff is loose. Everything's loose. Like, I have stuff that's carded or boxed, but it's not in this room. It's elsewhere. I saw a guy who had a collection that was all graded stuff in clamshells. And I'm like, me personally, I think it's disgusting. But I'm like, right on, man. You know, like, I'm not gonna talk shit to you. I'm not gonna try to, like, you know, badmouth what brings you joy. Like, as long as it brings you joy, that's cool.
There you go.
I had a situation just yesterday. So Top Gun Maverick Toys came out, right? Because the movie was supposed to come out. The movie got put on hold. But the toys came out a long time ago. And that set came out with Maverick and that Russian pilot. And all I wanted was that Maverick helmet. That's all I wanted out of that whole set with the two planes. And I bought the set. Take out the Maverick figure, you know, rip the head off because I had an idea for a custom, and I made it. And then yesterday, somebody posted the exact same thing, you know, and it gives you a little pause. You're like, it's kind of like copycat and duplicate. Like, was this parallel thinking, or was this somebody saw my shit and was like, oh, order that set and do the exact same thing? And you know, I don't want to question it. I was just like, oh, hey, cool, I did the same thing a fucking year ago, you know.
There you go.
Yeah, I just leave it alone. But,
we sometimes we say that they're like, we'll come up with an idea or we want something to happen, you know. It's like, this is before the Mystery Science Theater 3000 revival and, you know, Netflix picking it up, and we would joke that, hey, if you simply put it out into the world, for whatever reason, it'll get picked up and somebody will make it happen. Like, you don't always have to be the one to sit there and make the thing. It's like, all you simply have to do is just put it out into the world that you're interested in it, or that it would be a good idea. And it does. It magically, like, oh, you know, yeah, costume wise, you know, you see the licensed replicas of Iron Man helmets or Captain America helmets and this and that. And for years before, it was the little cottage industry people, the prop makers and the costume makers on Etsy. They're cranking them out. They're making them. They figured it out. They got the 3D files. They're printing it. They're doing all this stuff. And then eventually the rest of the world catches up. And it's like, oh, I can just go out and buy a licensed Hasbro or whatnot Iron Man head.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes it just takes time for it to, like, seep into the right places.
You just got to plant that seed, right? Sectars.
Exactly.
Joe's going to do it.
Exactly. It's going to happen. Joe's going to make some sectar crossovers.
I'm going to make Rock Lord Joe's.
So you're going to take that standard figure and simply take some Sculpey or epoxy sculpt and just squish it into their back, straight into their back, and just press them back into it. Done.
Meatball.
That's exactly. That's all it's
there. It is. Yeah.
Well, John, I was gonna say, I know you can edit it out, you know, this part. I do have to go somewhere in 4 minutes. You guys, please keep going though. I don't want you, obviously, don't stop because I'm leaving, but I had to do something at 4. If it wasn't for the, like I said, that delay where I was having issues with my laptop, I know we could add more time. So
yeah. No, we can wrap this up now.
Yeah.
Wrap this up now. It's fine.
All right. I just feel bad. I wish my, you know, didn't screw up and
no. It's so we're gonna close out. You guys can tell us where we can catch you. You know, if social media streams, wherever else we can see you guys.
Okay, for me, it's real easy. You can just find me on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter. Basically, just looking up Joe Amato, Joe Amato Customs. You'll know me. You're going to see an icon. But I do have my Instagram page, Twitter page, Facebook. You can find me as just me as Joe Amato or Joe Amato Custom Creations. And you can also find me on a podcast that we do live every Sunday night at 9 p.m. Eastern time on YouTube. It's called Fans of Power. There's a great group of people One person's a little off her rocker, but the other two, you know, they're all right. Well, that other person, she likes pushing the buttons. She tried to poison me with these really hard cookies one time. She was choking me. This was pretty violent. You got to watch out for her. But yeah, you can catch me there. Fans of Power.
Yep, you can also catch me on that podcast.
Yeah, she's the violent one.
Mm-hmm.
With the cookies?
The cookies, they were hard too. I mean, they tasted good, but God, were they hard. I had to stop eating them. I didn't have no milk around me. I thought I was going to choke or something. They were rough, but they were tasty.
What about you, Chad? How often are you on the G.I. Joe? Is that like, because I've caught you on there several times now.
Oh, the Real American Headcast Bravo team?
Yeah.
I guess I'm a co-host now. So basically, I guest host on the Bravo team stream on that channel every now and again. But since I've been on the past 4 in a row, I think Aaron wants me to be a co-host. So you can catch me on YouTube on G.I. Joe Real American Headcast Bravo team, only on Bravo team. And that's whenever we decide to do it. And you can find me on Facebook at Articulated Chat. I don't have an Instagram or any of that crap. So that's it.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you guys coming on and doing this. Sorry about all the technical issues early on.
No,
great seeing everybody.
Yeah, you too.
All right.
All right.
See you later, Joe.
Thanks much.